Thank you for listening to the Living Zen-podcast. If you've been listening for a while and are wondering how you can take the next step in developing your own Zen practice, or how you can more formally connect with our community, please explore our online Orientation to Zen practice, which you can find on our website at zenwest.ca. If you enjoy the resources that we make available online, we would very much appreciate your support. There are a number of ways that you can help us continue to do the work we do. One of the best ways is by becoming a part of our community as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen-podcast, eZendo, and our online Orientation to Zen will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at zenwest.ca and click on Become an Associate. Many more Zen Talks are available for purchase on iTunes and at Amazon.com. Just search for Venerable Eshu Martin. These talks are also made available for free on our website for all of our members and associates. You may also want to download the Living Zen Podcast app, which makes downloading and listening to the podcast effortless. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening to Living Zen. Tonight, looking around, I'd like to talk a little bit about posture, a little bit about the physical practice of Zen meditation. Generally, people tend to fall into one of two extremes when it comes to posture in meditation. The first one is that we get really tight with our posture. We have a very rigid idea of what our posture ought to be like. And oftentimes it's in direct conflict with how our body actually works. So we figure, I'm going to go meditate, so I should look like those people in the meditation magazines and advertisements. I should twist my legs up into whatever posture I figure looks good, even if I'm in excruciating pain and just wishing for the bell to ring the entire time that everyone's meditating. Or else we go to the other extreme and we just plop ourselves down without too much concern, just however we want. We figure meditation is just a mental thing, so who cares? What does it matter how we use the body? And from the perspective of Zen practice, this is a mistake. For many of us, we tend to think of the mind, our minds, and our bodies as distinct, separate things. Even though mind and body are one is a common enough idea, it's very difficult for us to grasp what this actually means in practice. And so when we come to take up a meditation practice, we receive instruction in postures, the first thing that we do. If we're going to sit down and try to investigate the nature of mind, if we're to sit down and investigate what's going on inside of us, we need to establish a stable foundation. And the first thing that we need to do when we're doing this is to be honest. When we come to sit, we need to be honest with our bodies. What I mean by this is we have to be aware and clear about what our limitations are physically. If we take up a posture and from the moment that we sit down we're in physical pain, that's probably not the best posture for you to be sitting in at this moment. I fully support people sitting in lotus, half lotus, full lotus, quarter lotus. But the time to start training the body to do that is not the first time we start meditating. This is a lifelong practice to develop the body to be able to sit in these postures. You can't just sit in a chair or a lazy boy your whole life and hope to sit full lotus when you come to the Zendo. And that's the only time you sit full lotus. If you're in pain as you're sitting, be gentle. Be compassionate with yourself. Try sitting seiza. If you're having problems sitting in seiza with your knees or with your hips or with your back, take up a chair. There is no shame in a chair. There is nothing wrong with a chair. At the end of each evening, we chant a sutra called the Final Instructions of Daito Kokushi, the national teacher Kozen Daito. He was a great Zen master in around 1250. He sat in a chair his whole career. He couldn't sit full lotus. The reason that I'm sort of going on about this is because so many of us, when we come to practice, we want to skip ahead. We want to skip to the next thing. We want enlightenment or personal improvement or greater awareness or better focus. But all of these things rely on a foundation. And the two aspects of practice that I've touched on so far are honesty and stability. And if we can't engage with these two principles in practice, we're going to have a difficult time with awakening. So when we come into the Zendo, first be honest with ourselves. Take up a posture which is stable. I generally recommend a tripod, so your butt has a nice firm base, your knees, one way or the other, either in a cross-legged lotus, Burmese, half lotus, or in seiza, your knees are solidly planted on the ground. If they're floating up, you're not stable. And if you're not stable, it's very difficult to settle in because this lizard brain at the back of your head is fundamentally worried about keeling over. Develop stability. In our ordinary chair-sitting lives, we lose strength in our backs. When we sit, we rest the top of our body weight, the top of our backs against the back of the chair, and there's like a vacuum between our sit bones and our shoulder blades. And so our lower backs get really weak. So for many people, when we come to sit meditation, it's very difficult to sit with a straight back because our backs have become so, weak. So we find ourselves constantly having to do this sort of like reverse sit-up. Give yourself some time. When you're at home, take the time to just sit on the floor, cross-legged. Use a cushion under your bum if you like. But even just flat on the floor is fine. This, over time, will develop the strength in your back. It takes time. When we're chanting, our posture is also important. One of the tendencies that we have, I call this student-itis, is that whenever we read something, we hold it down by our waist, and so we look down at the thing that we're chanting. And if you look at my posture, this is not such a straight thing. So when we're chanting, you want to hold your chant sheet up in front of your face, eye level, so that your back can be nice and straight, so that you can breathe. All of this is important because, as I said at the beginning of this talk, our minds and our bodies are not two separate things. For those of you that have been a few times, you'll notice that sometimes when you shift around, I'll make the correction, sit still. And I'm not judging you. I'm not criticizing you. I'm reminding you. One of the metaphors that's often used in Zen practice is it's like taking a jar full of water and throwing a handful of dirt in it, and we shake it up. And that's kind of how we live our lives. We have all of these thoughts and all of these emotions, and as we go through our lives, we are agitated. So when we come to sit down, it's like taking this jar of muddy water and sitting it down. And just like the jar of water, as you allow it to settle, the sediment, the particles, will settle out of it. Just so, as we sit, we find that if we're able to sit still, not rigidly, not sort of like gritting our teeth and trying not to move, but relaxed and still, we find that the mind, the emotions, the breath, they all begin to slow down. They all begin to settle. And just like the jar, if we don't further agitate it, if we don't sort of like try to make it hurry up and settle by sticking our finger in it, it settles more and more. Now, I don't condone masochism, so if you feel like something's going to need to be cut off, you should move. But for small itches, little discomforts, I would ask that instead of moving around, instead of immediately responding to make yourself more comfortable, pay attention. Investigate how it is that you respond to small discomforts. Is it necessary to immediately shift around, to immediately adjust, to immediately react to every small stimulation? Now, I'm sure some of you can understand that this meditation practice, these things that arise, these challenges, are the very challenges that we face in every day of our lives. What happens when we become a little bit uncomfortable? What happens when we're confronted by little adversities? Are we able to keep space? Are we able to embrace those difficulties as a part of our experience of living? Or do we always react? Are we always jumping this way and that anytime something makes us the least bit uncomfortable? Are we reaching for something to make us more comfortable, happier? Our Zen practice is not about becoming really great meditators. It's not about becoming these wonderful theatrical performers of Zen ritual. Our practice involves awakening to our true nature. We engage in this formal practice because no matter what it is that we do, we are there. No matter what it is that we do, our nature is manifesting. The way that we engage in this practice together as a community in this environment allows us to more easily see what's going on in our lives. It allows us to become more aware of how we are engaging, how we are making relationship, how we are either reacting or responding to our environment. By allowing us to develop that awareness, by allowing us to develop that space, we become able to take that out into our everyday lives. We begin to be able to transform. And this transformation, little bit by little bit, is the way that we begin to transform this world that we live in. It's the way that we begin to manifest our lives for the benefit of all beings. This transformation is the true manifestation of Zen. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.